The following production is part of the Play Some Video Games podcast network.
Greetings, Peggies, and welcome to Board with Video Games, the gaming podcast that strives for the right balance of coverage for the games you play on your table and on your television. You can think of us as the bacon and eggs of gaming podcasts. We're a proud member of the PSVG Podcast Network. I am one of your hosts, Kyle, and joining me on this co-op adventure, the guy whose crispiness is only surpassed by his saltiness. Josh, how are you doing this evening?
Very salty today.
I've noticed in Discord, you seem to be a little salty today. But you like bacon?
Yes, but it was a newfound love. I used to hate bacon.
Wow. When did you start liking bacon?
When I first started dating my wife, my friend who now lives in California had a bacon fest party at her house. Mm-hmm. And everyone that was going to prepare a different style of bacon, like candied bacon, chocolate covered bacon, whatever, bacon cupcakes, whatever they made. I don't even remember. But it was people kept pushing me to try bacon because I kept saying how much I didn't like it. I'm like, I don't need to try it. I know I don't like it. But it was a way to get my current girlfriend to meet my friends for the first time. So it was more of a social obligation. And then that's where I turned the corner on the bacon. And now I eat as much bacon as I possibly can.
So, not that I want to go too far down this rabbit hole, but when you were eating bacon, like how crispy versus how floppy, like how well done, like how do you like your bacon?
I almost said something that would be taken way out of context. I don't mind. I prefer crispy bacon, but Alexa's hearing me somehow. I said crispy bacon, Alexa. What is going on?
You're going to end up with like pounds and pounds of bacon at your door tomorrow.
So not black. It can't be like charcoaly. It has to be crunchy.
Okay.
But still moist, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm okay if it's not thoroughly cooked, but I don't like it when I'm judging if it's now cooked enough or not. It can be like chewy, but I don't like if I look at it and question if it's safe to eat.
Gotcha. So when you hold it, are you okay if it flops, or does it have to be rigid?
Yeah, I'm all right with it. I'm all right with that floppy piece of bacon.
Okay, floppy bacon. I'm a big fan of bacon.
What about you?
I'm a big fan of bacon in general. I just don't like it when it's super overdone. We actually when we go visit my wife's parents, we go visit a specific butcher that is not too far from them, and that's where we buy our bacon from. And then we'll buy a whole bunch of it at a time, and then we freeze some of it. And yeah, I enjoy bacon, but I've also become quite snobby about my bacon. That, if I go to the grocery store and they have the super cheap bacon, like I don't even want to buy it. I'm like, it gets the job done, but it's not really what I'm looking for. So, but hey, you know what? This isn't a bacon podcast, though. I don't know if I'm sure a bacon podcast exists, but I bet we could make a pretty good bacon podcast. This is a gaming podcast. Thanks so much for joining us this week. As always, if you have any questions, feedback, suggested topics, hit us up on the social medias at Board with VG on Twitter and on Instagram, where Josh posts all of our sweet pictures of all of the things he's playing, and I occasionally post a picture of something I am playing. You can find us over on Facebook at facebook.com/boardwithvg. And again, if you want to communicate in the long form, feel free to send us an email, boardwithvg@gmail.com. And no matter the social media you're using, use that hashtag boardwithvg so that we can all be in the conversation together, and we don't necessarily have to tag each other all the time. We can just use that hashtag to find out what people are playing and what they're talking about in regards to games and what is going on. But hey, that's enough of this housekeeping stuff. Let's talk about some awesome games. Josh, what have you been playing on your tabletop, sir?
Well, I finally got Azul to the table. I know that I'm sure people saw the pictures. I'm hoping they did. or I should say floor, because that's where we play our board games now. Which still bothers me. I wish I could put my dining room away from the baby's room, but alas, we are living the lives of floor people, so that's how we'll play. Azul, I'm assuming I'm saying it right. I've only heard it said that way.
That's all I've ever heard it.
Is essentially to describe it, people I think often describe it as a tile laying game. It's not necessarily a tile laying game.
Like Carcassonne?
Like Carcassonne, like something you might picture, but it's literally floor tiles that you are placing. So I have the instruction booklet next to me just so I reference the things correctly. So in a 2-player game and a 4-player game, you play with different amounts of what they call, and then I remember where to look, and now I don't see it, factory displays. And essentially they look like coasters, circle coasters. And that's your factory display, which essentially is going to hold your display tiles that you'll draft as you play through the game. So in a 2-player game, you set up five displays in a circle, and then you leave a space in the middle, which they consider the center of the table. And you put 4 tiles out of a bag. You put all the tiles in the game into a bag, and these tiles are different colors, and some of them have patterns on them, and some of them are just a solid color. And you will draw 4 from the bag randomly onto each the floor display. And so what's going to happen from there is you're going to start drafting. Someone will get the first player tile, and you have a board in front of you. On your board, on the top of your board, you have a score track. And then to the bottom left, you have a pattern line grid. And you're going to fill that up first. And what it is 5 stacks or columns. In the top one, there's 1 empty space, and then 2, 3, 4, 5 going down. And next to your pattern lines is your wall, which is essentially what you're going to be matching your tiles up to complete a wall segment. And on the very bottom, you have a floor line. And a floor line is a negative point line. And what happens is, on your turn, you draw. So let's say the first floor display has 2 blues, a red, and a yellow. And you want to take those 2 blues. So you'll take 2 of them, and you'll put them onto your pattern lines how you decide. You can put 1 into the 1 space, but your extra 1 will have to go into your floor line, which will give you a negative point.
Okay.
Eventually. You can put it in the 2 space, and that will occupy 2 spots. If you put it in the 3, it occupies 2 in the 3 spot, but then you can only place tiles of the same color in that line afterwards. So extreme example, say you have to take 1 tile and it's a red, and you have to put it in your 5 line space. Now you can only put more reds until you fill up that space.
Okay.
The tiles you didn't take from the display, you're putting in the middle of the table. And now these are starting to form a draw pile. So what you do is, once you start, you're going to put the first player tile in the center of the table. The first person to draft tiles from the center will also take the first player marker and put it on their floor display, essentially giving them -1 point as their penalty for drawing from the middle. And as you'll play around, you'll play until all the floor displays are emptied. And then what you'll do is you'll simultaneously take your turn. We did it 1 by 1 just so we could keep track of who's doing what and score correctly. So what you do is you start at the very top of your track, and say you put a blue in the first spot, you will then, because that spot is full all the way, you'll take that blue and move it to the right onto your wall, and you'll put it in the blue spot. And then you'll do the same if you can with bottom ones. But if you move down to the 2 and you did 2 reds, you move 1 of the reds into the red. But now, because each line only has 1 color, you then discard that other red from the game.
Okay.
And it goes into the box. And eventually you'll draw the box back into the bag to draw in the future. But what's going to happen is after you do this, and there's definitely there's a lot of strategy involved and a lot of ways to lose points if you don't pay attention to what tiles you're drawing. The game ends once a fully horizontal line is completed on one person's wall.
Mm-hmm.
However, you then go through a scoring phase because you get extra points for completed vertical lines. You get extra points if you have like every single blue filled in on the available blue spots on the board.
Okay.
You'll get extra points if you actually completed 2 horizontal lines on your last turn. So the more horizontal lines you have, even 3, depending on how well you played your turn,
okay,
works. So the scoring is, well, it's pretty simple once you figure it out. We had some issues. The rulebook's only 6 pages long, and it wasn't super clear on how the center of the table drawing was going to take place. So we had to do some trial and error to make sure we were doing it right. You know, it's a big part of the game, so I really didn't want to house rule something that could affect the entire outcome of the game. So I won the first game by 2 points, but we both liked it enough. We immediately played a second game, and then I beat her again by a little bit more than that, but they were 2 close games. So I think the game will change wildly with more players because of the different options that will be available to you and the situations you'll be forced into taking more negative points.
Right.
But it's a very pretty game. The design is incredible, and I really enjoy the gameplay style a lot. So this will be something that I try to introduce to more people and play more often.
How do you think it would, because I know you said that obviously it'd probably play it differently. Do you think it would play it better with more people? Because I've heard that 2 seems to kind of be the best way to play this game, but I don't know if that's true.
I'm interested to find out. I don't know. I think it's something I definitely can't say for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Because Sagrada, I think that plays equally well with 2 or 4 players.
Mm-hmm.
So Azul could be the same situation. Or, maybe 2 players could be better because it can be a little bit more intimate and a little bit more take your time. Because we were I think we might have the voice on at the same time. So
okay.
It wasn't something I really necessarily felt like you don't need to pay extremely close attention to.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you want to. I know some people can't stand having other distractions
right.
going on. I think for phones, that's more a one-sided thing. So I think it's different if we're watching a show together.
Right.
But I don't know. I'll report back once we get our friends to play with us, and we'll see how it plays. But did you ever end up biting the bullet and getting that?
We have not gotten it yet. We've thought about it, and I've talked about it many times. We just have so many games that we haven't played yet that it's really hard for me to justify getting another one, especially with all the Kickstarters I've backed recently.
Yeah, I hear you.
So, I would like to play it someday. It is on the list, and I always keep an eye out for sales or when it comes back in stock because it sells out pretty regularly. But it's definitely on the short list, but I've not had a chance to pick it up yet or play it.
Cool. What about you, my friend?
So, I was debating what I wanted to talk about, and this is the game I'm going to talk about today, but it's kind of a cop-out because I've only played it via the app. However, that is the only way I will ever play this game because it's not a game my wife will ever play with me. It's not a game she's interested in. It's not a theme she particularly cares about. And it is a style of game that is much more up my alley than it is her alley. And that is the game Baseball Highlights 2045. Have you heard of this? Have you played this before ever, Josh?
I've heard of it, but I've always been turned off by the theme. But that's just me only knowing the name of the game.
Right. And, I totally understand that. I'm a huge baseball fan. So for me, I always thought this was kind of interesting. It's designed by Mike Fitzgerald, printed by Eagle Griffin. It's got a pretty strong fan base this game does, and there's a ton of expansions for it. There are so many promo cards for this game. It is kind of overwhelming, actually. But I never really understood how this game would work or how it would feel like baseball, right? Because it's basically a deck building game that is also a baseball game. And the game play is actually pretty simple. The idea is that it's the year 2045. Baseball has had in the late 2030s was almost going extinct. Like people were almost not watching it anymore because the NFL had become so popular. So baseball pulled out all the stops and created all of these new robots and cyborgs that play along with still quote unquote natural players. And that's where you get to Baseball Highlights 2045. So you have three classes, if you would. You have naturals, cyborgs, and robots. And on your basically how the game works is it's played over 6 innings, but you play a series. So you're going to play like a best of 5. And you have a deck of, I think, 15 cards, and you draw 6 of them for your hand. And that is going to be the only 6 card, most likely the only 6, maybe 7 cards you're going to play over the course of that entire game. You basically are going to play 1 card an inning. You have a little player board, and on your player board, you have a place to play down your cards. You have a baseball diamond, so you can see like what bases folks are on. But on your turn, basically, you play a card from your hand. There's the possibility that your card has an immediate action on it. If it does, you do that. The immediate actions could be like to cancel a hit from the other team, or to pick someone off, or to have your players steal bases, or things that would happen that are going to change basically the setup of either the hits or the players on the cards of what they're doing. So you immediately play those immediate actions, whatever they do. This is where things get a little weird then. After that active immediate action is resolved, your opponent's threatened hits happen. So when you play a card, you have immediate actions and you have threatened hits on it. So basically, I might play a card that says, pick off one player, and it might be the immediate action. So I would like pick off the player from another team. Their threatened hits would occur, and then my threatened hits would go onto the card. So basically, my card might say, pick off one player, single, double. So then then I put 2 little dudes in my batter's box that represent the single and the double, and then I pass the turn to the other person. If their immediate action doesn't do anything to stop that single and double from happening, then after their immediate action would happen, my single and double would happen. So it's kind of like you have a turn, but your turn is like a half a turn all the time, because you're playing your immediate action and then the other person's movements happen. And then it comes back to you to like place your things for your movement. Then it goes back to them. They play a card and do their immediate actions. Then it comes back to you. Your movements happen. Then it goes back to them and they do their threatened actions. So it's kind of a weird like back and forth the entire time that the game is going on. And honestly, when I first started playing it, I wasn't totally understanding what was happening. But that's also because I didn't do any of the tutorial. I just started playing the game. But then I went back and did the tutorial, and it made much more sense.
As usual, yeah.
So, but it's really interesting. And then after the game is over, obviously, like I said, the game is played over 6 innings. There's things for pinch hitters and trying to do saves and all these other things that I'm not going to get into. But then after the game is over, you actually can draft new players from a common pool of players that are available. And then but in order to do that, you have to send, for every player you draft, you have to send a person down to the minors that you will never get that card back. So it's very kind of this, okay, who do I want to get rid of? What's better? So you're kind of building this deck, and then you shuffle up. I think you shuffle up, and then you draw 6 new cards, though you always get the cards you draft. But then you draw 6 new cards, and then you play the next game, and it's like the best of a 5-game series. So it's pretty interesting, actually. And if you think about like how many expansions there are and how many different teams you could have, it makes sense. Like there's a lot of opportunity in this game to do a lot of different unique things. I'm glad I own it. I got it on sale. It was 99 cents on Android. I think the sale only runs for 2 more days. So by the time this post is probably over. But there obviously, like, it doesn't come with everything. That's only 4 teams. There's a lot of expansions it doesn't come with. So there's still in-game purchases. But I think it's only $3.99 regularly. And if you're looking for a quick game, then you like kind of that deck building mechanic, and you like baseball, I definitely think it's a game to check out. It's pretty easy to learn. It takes a little bit of thought process to trying to figure out what's going to be the best thing to do and how you're going to react to the cards that are being played by the opponent. You can play online against other people if you want to. I've only played against the AI, but you can play against other people if you want as well through the app. Or if you want to, you can buy the game in a box. It still comes with the player board. It comes with all the same stuff. And it has a pretty strong following. There's likely people in your area who are playing this. I know that there are like leagues for this game that people play online, even online or locally. So it's pretty big. And like I said, if you're looking for a deck building game and you're like baseball, Baseball Highlights 2045. I recommend it. It's pretty fun. So
I just bought it for 99 cents.
Oh, did you? Excellent. Like I said, you might not totally dig it because you're not a huge baseball guy, but
I'm a huge baseball guy.
What's that?
I am a huge baseball guy.
Oh, then why didn't you want to play this game?
That's something about a baseball board game doesn't appeal to me at all.
Yeah, I think it's easily worth the 99 cents, though.
Well, it's nice to know that by 2045 they fixed the structure of baseball to 6 innings, because that's appealing to me now.
That is true. That is very true. Even as someone who really loved baseball, like by like the 6th or 7th inning, if my team's up, I'm like, I hope that all of these innings just go 1, 2, 3, so we can wrap this up and get out of here.
Yeah,
awesome.
I should say I was a big baseball. I haven't watched baseball in a little bit, but I mean, Red Sox all my life. So
gotcha.
I'm used to losing.
So, hey, those are the board games we've been talking about. Let's switch it up and talk about some video games. Josh, what have you been playing on your television, sir?
Okay, well, I mean, I don't think there'll be too much of a surprise. I did post some pictures as well. I will say, if you listen to so last week when we talked about, I started Far Cry 5, my statement was accurate for the time that I put into the game, but it is significantly different after you put about an hour to 2 into the game. So like I said, like it's pretty real, and I think that they are self-aware that I won't talk too much about this now. But essentially the game opens up to be a lot more comical and over the top in certain situations, and intense and interesting and scary and funny and all the above, all the emotions are in the game. I will say I'm really enjoying my time with the game. I really wish I had more time to play. But essentially now it just comes down to sacrificing sleep when I do play, and I'm at a point in my life right now where I need all the sleep I can get currently. So I'm really debating, like I was going to play some more tonight, but I might have to go to bed just because I'm emotionally exhausted. And then Sea of Thieves, we played some more. I was playing Far Cry 5, and Jason from Voxtapose sent me a Discord message asking if I wanted to jump into Sea of Thieves, and my wife had just went out. It was like 9:30 at night. She ran out to Target, and the baby was asleep. So I was like, yeah, like Kyle and I basically just had a whole conversation about it. If someone asks us to jump into games, we would do that.
Yeah, nobody asked me to jump in, but that's fine.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I had no say. Yeah, I was in the middle of my Mannequin Village adventure when he messaged me. So
that's okay. I was playing Overwatch. I was okay.
I'm hoping when I jump back into Far Cry, I'm still in that Mannequin Town, so I can continue
taking pictures of pumpkins.
While I was shooting the heads off of all the mannequins, hoping I was going to get some weird achievement or something. So we jumped into Sea of Thieves. I didn't really know what the plan was, but we jumped in with Tyler from PSVG and his fiance. So we had a big old boat and some quests. So we really just were kind of sailing around looking for people to like attack and just have some fun in general. And then Tyler was like, oh, hey, I did one of those raids last night. You guys want to do one? And we're like, yeah. He's like, oh, okay. If a skull pops up, that's what we're going to look for. So in Sea of Thieves, randomly, and we've played a couple times where they were out there and we just didn't know what they were.
Right.
But a giant skull-shaped cloud comes up with like green glowing eyes. And typically it's very far away, and it was for us. And we sailed to it forever, and we finally got to it, and basically it pops. I don't think it populates an island. I think it just populates over an existing island. But the island essentially has the guard post towers or cannons all around it, 4 posts, and they immediately start firing upon you as you approach the island. And then music starts playing, and you start taking on waves of skeletons. We did make sure to load up the ship with as many cannonballs. I think we had 170 on board. And basically what happened was, I think Amanda, I'm sorry if I got her name wrong. I think Tyler's fiance's name's Amanda. Amanda and I stayed on the boat, and we would man the cannons. we directed the boat to tilt sideways, so it was facing, and then anchored it so it didn't move.
Oh, okay. Yep.
So just one side of the cannons was facing the island, and this little alcove where the skeletons would come down, and then Jason and Tyler were on the island fighting these skeletons, and each wave was a different difficulty of skeleton. Like you have like your base skeletons, and then you have these like skeletons with blue bandanas where I think you do more damage to them if they're in the water. Then you had skeletons with glowing eyes where you had to show your lantern to them first before you attacked them. And then there was gold-plated skeletons where you had to take their gold-plated armor off before you could kill them. And I think we went through 10 waves. It took about 40, 45 minutes. Just constant firing. And after we completed it, you get a key, and the key opens basically a treasure room. And inside the treasure room, we found maybe 15 to 20 chests and skulls and barrels, and loaded them up by one into the ship, and then had crippling anxiety, hoping
no one would catch up.
No one would catch us on our way back. Then we got back, cashed them all in. I think we got like 17,000 gold coins. All my reputation increased at every vendor. So like my character is like formidable now. So it was really cool. I had a great time with it. I don't think it changes too much about our previous conversation about Sea of Thieves.
Right.
Because if
that's
I do
a fun
it again,
thing to do with 3 people.
Right. Or if I do it again, it's just going to be doing that same thing again.
Right.
Because a raid's a raid. So like it's just another repeatable thing. But it's definitely a better way to get more treasure and gold.
Right.
But that's pretty much been the sum of my video gaming.
Gotcha. So very briefly, the wife and I tonight actually started Lovers in a Dangerous Space Time.
Oh, I like that game.
We got halfway through the first world, I think. So stage like 3 or stage 4 of the first world. Then we called it a night. That game's fun. Mm-hmm. Like it's a fun little game. We're playing obviously couch co-op. Yeah, I think you can play it by yourself, but you can play it up to 4 players. And basically, you're trying to, bring back love to the world, and you're flying your little spaceship around and trying to rescue all these rabbits that yeah, it's pretty crazy. And basically, you like one person is controlling like propulsion while somebody else is running around jumping on guns. But then sometimes you have to move for propulsion to move the shield, and so it's just trying to communicate. Similar to like Overcooked, where you're both yelling at each other to do different things, and neither one of you are doing the thing the other person you want the other person to do. So. But no, we went really well. It was fun. Yeah, it was good. We'll keep playing it. I asked after we're done, I'm like, all right, do you like this? Do you want to keep playing this? And she said, yes, that she does. So we will continue to work on that and then after that, hopefully we'll play A Way Out. I have it. She just hasn't wanted to play it with me yet. But we have to get those done before the Lego Incredibles game comes out. Because she very much wants to play that. So we will be playing that later. But hey, the other game that I've been playing very, very briefly, and I'm not going to talk about it too long, is I have been playing Far Cry 5. You said you're not very far. Have you cleared like one of the areas yet or no? Like one of the 3?
No, I'm in the sister.
Okay, so that's where you started?
In the Bliss.
Okay.
I've gotten through 2 cinematic storylines for her. Like, okay. She interrupts you a couple times, but the map's so big, like,
right.
I just try to clear like a cleared path between places.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I started with John. And the reason I started with John is I don't know, not because the game tells you to, but because the person who does the voice for it is one of the actors from Castle. So
who is it?
Seamus Deaver.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, who plays Ryan on Castle, does the voice for John. But anyway, so that's where I started. I have that area cleared. I have finished all of the storyline stuff there. There's still some side quests and things to do, but the reputation of the area is maxed out and all of that good stuff. So I will probably actually jump over to the sisters area next is what I'm thinking. Overall, I think for the PSVG group, I am probably the person who likes this game the least.
Really?
I like it still, but I don't love it. And I think maybe it's because it's just another Far Cry game to me, which I like. I like the Far Cry games, but they've changed some things with how you like level up and the perk points and like all of that stuff. but the general everything else about the game just feels like a Far Cry game, which isn't bad. But I think, and maybe unfairly, with how awesome I feel like all the awesome things they did with Assassin's Creed and taking it to the next level, I was hoping that maybe, which I don't know, probably me putting unfair expectations on the team of like maybe they're going to do something really, really different with Far Cry this time, and they didn't, which is fine. So it's still fun. Like I'm having fun. I'm still playing it. Like I'm going to continue to play it. I just like, whereas like Donnie and stuff are talking about how he's like all he wants to do is get back to playing Far Cry. Like when I sit down, I'm like, is anybody online playing Overwatch? No, then I'm going to play Far Cry. But if people are playing Overwatch, I'm still going to play Overwatch first.
We should try some Far Cry Arcade. Have you tried that yet?
I have not tried the arcade yet, but we should do that and play some co-op because I think that'd be fun. Yeah. But yeah, so that's where I am with Far Cry. But like I said, it's good. It's not. There's nothing wrong with it. There have been. I know there was some people on the Twitters having Twitter fights about bugs and being like, people being like, well, I haven't any bugs on Xbox. I'm playing on Xbox and I have had bugs.
Have you?
So yeah, I mean nothing horrible, but like things like. And some of them aren't bugs. Like I have had a few bugs of like I'll get out of my vehicle and then like I'll like go to do something, and then when I come back to my vehicle, like it's just like the steering wheel floating in midair, or like especially like when I like things will blow up and they'll like fly like gone like off the map. Yeah, like nothing bad, like nothing that's like game breaking or I'm losing progress or anything like that. Just weird glitchy like things that sometimes happen in open world games when you have so many things that you're not expecting. The one thing that does happen though, and this happens regularly and it annoys me, is I'll be talking to an NPC and they'll see a bear 8 miles away and then they start screaming because of the bear and stop our conversation. And I'm like,
a bear kill a couple of NPCs while I'm trying to talk to them.
Which that makes sense because there's a bear. Like then they're freaking out. That's fine. But like they start freaking out and running, and I turn around. I'm like, that bear is like way far away. Or like cult members will come up, like drive by, and like my meter will start to fill, and then they freak out. And I'm like, they're gonna keep driving. It's fine. And I'm just like, just finish this conversation with me, please. So that's the only thing that I find annoying about the game. But yeah, otherwise I'm just running around with a shotgun and plugging people and blowing stuff up. So I started playing silently and I was like, I don't need to. So I'm just running around with a shotgun. That's all I'm doing. It's pretty great. But we'll talk more about that later. We're going to take a little bit of a detour. Typically, we jump into the topic of the show. We are going to get to our topic still today, but we want to take a minute to answer some of these email questions that we've had, emails/questions that we've had, because we've been skipping them the last couple of weeks because our topics have been so in-depth and insightful. So we wanted to make sure that we got these answered because it matters when you ask us questions. We wanted to make sure we're giving you guys time. So first off, the folks over at the PlayStation Experience Podcast, which is at PSXP Podcast on Twitter, say, hey, apologize if you've covered this topic before, but what are some good single-player board or card games? Josh, sir, what are some of those good solitaire games that you really enjoy playing?
Well, one that is both is Onirim, which is also an excellent app game, which I think most, if they exist, if there's an app for a single player game, those are usually very solid. Mm-hmm. Samurai Spirit is a game I have that I've heard great things about, that I haven't played, but I have a friend who regularly will get home from a long night of work and set up a game of, Samurai Spirit and have a beer and just sit down at his table and play. So that's supposed to be really good. In Super Hot by Grey Fox Games, which is based off of the video game of the same name, is an entertaining one-player game and preferably played as a one-player game, even though it can be played with two players. Those would be some recommendations. I mean, that's tough. It's not a huge market for single-player games.
Yeah, I am not much of a single player board game person. Onirim is probably the only like true single player game that I really have, because I know we've talked about this before. When I'm going to play board games, I typically am doing this as part of a social thing. Like I'm doing it to hang out with people. If I'm going to play a game by myself, I'm usually playing video games. So yeah, Onirim is probably the one. There are a number of games that I own that you can play single player. Stuffed Fables, which I've been talking about, you can play by yourself. A lot of like the Pathfinder Adventure card game, you can play by yourself. Most of those games that have some sort of regular story, Gloomhaven you can play by yourself even if you want to, can't you?
You
Yeah.
can.
So a lot of those things are good options. The one thing I'm really interested in, I'm keeping an eye on right now, is there is a Kickstarter right now that's running currently. It's got, as of recording, 21 days to go. So it'll probably be about 19 days to go when this post, called Unbroken. Have you seen this Kickstarter?
No.
It is a single player only board game. And it's actually pretty affordable. I think it's $22 to back it. And it is a campaign. Basically, it is a campaign game. I think $46 is going to get you like a whole bunch of fun additional stuff, but just to get the game itself, I think is $22. But it is a campaign style game. Takes 20 to 30 minutes. It is single player only. And I'm actually really interested in it. It looks interesting. So I think if you're looking for a single player game, like I said, I have no idea if the game is going to be good. It has piqued my interest. I have not backed it yet, but I have it saved, so I'll know if I'll get the reminder 48 hours before it ends. It's definitely funded. Like, it is absolutely crushed its funding goal. But it looks interesting. So if you're looking for something, or maybe looking for a single player game that's maybe a little bit meatier, but still plays quickly, Unbroken on Kickstarter currently might be something for you to check out. The other question that we have is from super listener Shiplig at Dopalicious. And this is actually a really great question that I wish I had a good answer for. But Josh, why are there so many train games? Not even a fancy Hyperloop. Josh, why are there so many darn train games?
Well, like, you would think like the general answer would be because it's such a popular hobby, but it's not.
It's funny because if you Google it,
not in the board game industry.
If you Google it, people are like, well, everyone likes trains. Like, it's a really common thing for kids to get interested and excited about. And I'm like, maybe in Europe? I don't know. Like, I don't know any kids. Like, I guess most kids have toy trains, though, don't they?
Well, my memory as a kid is my aunt had a train set, and we weren't even allowed to touch it.
Oh, well, don't you have like the block train sets with like the wood tracks that you can just push them on? Isn't that a thing?
Yeah, and they sell like train tables at Toys R Us.
Yeah.
Well, used to. That's sad. Yeah, I don't know why. I mean, thematically, it works because you are generally, a lot of those games are about getting places, and it's a very easy way to cover long distances. So I think the bigger question is, why don't we see more plane or car games?
Right.
Oh no, he says, why do we see so many train games? Yeah. You're right. We shouldn't. We should see more car and plane games.
Yeah. Why are there so many train games?
Take tickets to ride and make it gas to drive.
Yeah. I don't know is my answer. I don't know why there's so many train games. I just don't.
But for Hyperloop, I don't know. I retweeted that and I sent it to Elon Musk, and we get no answer from him. So,
well, he's probably too worried.
He's working on it right now.
I think he's too worried about his company going bankrupt to worry about for us.
He'll be saved, I'm sure.
Well, did you hear that though? They're like in trouble. They're in trouble. Maybe
that's crazy.
He tweeted out jokes about going bankrupt, but like their credit just got Tesla's credit just got downgraded to junk.
Oh well,
like they owe like $1 billion in like the next 13 months or something like that. Like
Netflix is like $86 billion in debt. So like until he reaches Netflix debt, I'm not worried.
That's true. We'll see what happens. I think he does some cool stuff. I just hope everything works out. So
maybe a Hyperloop board game will get him out of debt.
Maybe we'll get. Yeah, we should definitely encourage that one. So sorry, Ship. Like, we don't know why there's so many darn train games. We just know there's a lot of them. So yeah. Anyway, if you have a good idea or as to why there's so many train games, let us know. Hit us up at boardwithvg on Twitter. Email us boardwithvg@gmail.com. Let us know why there's so many darn train games. So with that, hey, thanks again for sending those questions in. We really appreciate it. We are going to transition to our topic of the show. And this is a topic I think is interesting. We had a conversation about it in the Discord today to a degree, but I want to tackle this from a little bit of a different angle. So many people, Far Cry 5 was a really interesting proposition. How far would this game delve into the idea of like a theocratic rule of rural Montana? For some people, it has said plenty. For others, they say this game hasn't said enough, that it had an opportunity to say more in its story and it just didn't do that. I haven't finished the game, so I'm not going to discuss whether or not the story did what it should have or didn't do enough or anything like that, because I don't know yet. However, I want to have a conversation about how should you review or critique games? Should it be based on the content that is presented, or should you include feedback about missed opportunities? Like, is it fair to say that a board game is good, but it would have been great had they replaced the cardboard standees with minis? Is it fair to say that the story in the video game is good, but it would have been better if they would have paid for full voiceover work to have happened? How do we balance all of the, hey, critiquing what we're given and something within the context of what it is, versus bringing in outside information and applying that to a critique or a review of something? And like I said, I can't speak specifically about Far Cry 5 because I haven't finished it. But Josh, what are your thoughts on this general topic of conversation that is going on right now?
I mean, if you look at the media in general, like it's something that it's always been a hot topic. Not consistently, there's been waves. I think there's a big difference between a critique and a review, though, and I think that's where the line gets blurred. If you're a reviewer, then you should be reviewing. That's your job, to review the content put in front of you. Your job you weren't hired to be a consultant on the film, game, book, or whatever you're reviewing. Mm-hmm. If that was the case, then your critique should be welcomed. But if you don't have knowledge of budgets, how things are made, the process, you can critique all day, but does that bring validation to what you're doing, and what does that do? Like, essentially, people critique anything. If they don't find something that they think is bad, they can make something up. So you could play Far Cry 5. It could be an incredible game. And if you review it for what you have, then you'll give it a fair score for what it is. Let's take Breath of the Wild, since it's highly regarded as like the best rated game, regardless of my opinion on it. So take someone who gives Breath of the Wild a 10 out of 10. It's perfect. They did everything right. You could easily take a person adjacent to them as a reviewer and says, well, it was a great game, but I really think it's like a 7 out of 10 because I don't think their story for Ganon was good enough. I would have written it better. Like, that's a critique that it's not founded on any merit. It's like, I could say, what's your favorite movie? I could have written it better. Like, that's a critique that you could ask me to prove it, and I could be like, well, I'll send you my spec script I wrote 15 years ago when I was in graduate school, going, like, any critique like that could be taken that way.
Okay, so let me ask you a question then, sir.
Yeah.
So is it not fair then? Because what I just heard you say is that if I play a game and I don't think the story is very good, I can't knock it because I don't think the story is very good. I can't say like, hey, this game was like, I enjoyed the gameplay, but I didn't really like the story, so this game's an 8 out of 10. Okay, well, so based on my bad example, yes, that would be contradictory of what I meant. But I mean, I guess it's all subjective then when it really comes down to it, right? And I guess that's why there's critics and why there's reviews. But I don't know. I feel like I have a hard time. I think it's different for board games and video games because in a board game, you can make an observation that the game might be better with better pieces. Mm-hmm. But should it affect the gameplay? That's where the difference is. Like, you could say, like, photosynthesis. You just played it, and then if you were like, well, this game would be 10 times better if it had Lego trees instead of cardboard trees, because they won't deteriorate or whatever. Oh man, I never thought about Lego trees. That'd be a good idea.
But like, that's a legitimate like observation. Mm-hmm. But then but people don't take into consideration what that means. So are you still okay with it being more money now with better components? Or now are you going to say it costs too much because there's Lego trees in it? Right. So I don't think that reviewers are held as accountable as they're holding game developers.
Okay.
Not that it could be.
Right.
But I don't know. I feel like it's I don't know. It's such a, like, we had a conversation today, me and you, about Colin's review of Far Cry 5, right? And
I actually didn't say anything about it.
Or we briefly talked about it because you said because you felt weird about having this as a topic because of Colin's review.
Oh yeah, well that I did, yeah, but
yeah. I don't even read his stuff, and I know he's very popular.
Yeah, I would like to point out that this was our I sent out show notes prior to that video ever getting posted.
Right, but it's just what's at people. It's in the zeitgeist right now. So and then I listened to Sean Capri talk about it too after we talked because you mentioned he said something, so I wanted to hear what he said as well. But I don't know. It's just on the one hand, a reviewer's job is to pick apart a game, right? That's what their job is. But you don't have to view, and that's a one view. You can also view a reviewer's job just to review the content given to them, not necessarily to have to pick it apart.
Right. So I guess because here's the thing that I run into, and I'm not saying that I agree or I disagree with some of the pushback that is happening, especially about Far Cry 5, but in general, because if people had just said, I don't think the story in Far Cry 5 was very good, and not said anything else, would people be okay with them giving the game an 8 out of 10?
Right.
Or if they said, I don't think the game is very good because it set up these expectations for me, but it didn't deliver on them, and I think that they kind of wussed out and not delivering, it gets an 8 out of 10. Is one of those better or worse than the other?
Yeah. Okay. So yes. If what you said describes what popped into my head, and I'm going to use a movie reference. I don't know if you remember it, maybe 5 years ago, they rebooted Predator.
Oh, yeah.
And Adrian Brody in it, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that sounds right, yeah.
So in the trailer, I think that the big trailer that came out for it, there was, let's say it was 2 minutes and 30 seconds, like a typical trailer running time. Mm-hmm. About 3/4 of what they used in the trailer wasn't even in the film. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't scrapped footage. It was shot to make a trailer to get people to go see the movie. So if you're a Predator fan and your expectations were this scene in the trailer where Adrian Brody's in the woods and all of a sudden 100 of the red tracking beams show up all over him, mm-hmm. and you're expecting 50 Predators in this epic scene and you don't get even a blink of that, yes, you're entitled to critique that, and that's basically clickbait for film. Mm-hmm. They're getting you to pay $16 to go see a movie with the expectation of a movie that you're not going to see. So I think if that's represented in a game where someone expects to get something and they don't get it, but it's something that they were led to believe is in the content, mm-hmm. then yeah, I believe that should affect a score. But I see your point, because if you're just reviewing the game based on the content, that would never affect your score, right? Because the content, it's not in there.
Well, the thing, yeah, right, because that's the thing I wonder about, is that how many people have you heard say it's going to be really hard to go to open world games, after Breath of the Wild, because I'll want to climb everything.
Well, during the whole Zelda and Horizon Zero Dawn fiasco, yeah.
So would it be fair to have, if Horizon Zero Dawn 2 comes out and you can't climb everything, which you can't in Far Cry either, but nobody has said a word about that. I mean, you can get on some buildings and stuff.
Get some grappling points.
Yeah, but you can't climb all the trees. No. But in Horizon Zero Dawn 2, if you can't climb everything, and people are like, hey, man, this was a problem. You couldn't do it in the first one, and now because of Breath of the Wild, I just want to climb everything, so I can't give this game a 10. Is that okay? Because it's not what they were intended. It's not what they want. It's not the thing that they created. But this other thing has given you the influence of say, hey, I really like that. Is it okay to knock that game down? Or does it not matter because it's mechanics? So you can say from a mechanics standpoint, this is better, where a story you can't do that. Do you get what I'm getting at here?
Yeah, no. And it strikes a nerve because I remember this happening. I've never felt so defensive over a game like I did with Horizon Zero Dawn. Mm-hmm. And it was because of the Breath of the Wild stuff. And people were holding that against Horizon Zero Dawn. And nobody's asking for that.
Right.
It's great. You got to play a game where you could climb everything and fall off of everything. If that's what you're in for, that's great. But you can't go into, okay, this is where that line is. It's not a definitive blanket statement, but I don't think it's fair to go into a game with preconceived notion of your favorite game of all time being where you're going to review a game on, because you'll never find that game until the sequel you're waiting for comes out.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you know it or not, subconsciously you're waiting for your favorite game to get a sequel, and you're gonna score that higher because it's your favorite game. It's just how the mind works, with the exception of if a really terrible game came out of a franchise.
Right.
But I like Uncharted. I don't think you would typically see scores go down for the Uncharted games. It's just more of the same game with prettier graphics.
Well, I mean, it depends how you look at it. I mean,
not to belittle it, but
yeah, Lost Legacy went down a little bit. Uncharted 4 definitely didn't score as high as like Uncharted 2. Well, maybe it did. I guess I have to go back and look at the Metacritic. But like people thought it was too long. Like they were.
But they were like around like 92 to 95,
yeah,
I think,
sure.
right? For
I
all
mean,
of them.
not Lost Legacy, but yes, the others.
Right. No Drake, no score.
Right.
But no, I get your point, and I mean, you're entitled as a reviewer, as a human being, to judge anything against anything if you want to. But if you're an influencer and you're someone out there who has a following and people are listening to you, I think you owe it to people to be more fair, because not everyone likes your favorite game. And not everyone likes your favorite console, and not, it's set, but I mean, you've just been asking me, what do you think about like that, the whole, because like I think you were in the same part of that conversation with me with Horizon and Zelda. Like,
yeah.
How do you think that affects?
I'm a Sony fanboy, so for me, like what?
But I'm a Microsoft fanboy, and Horizon Zero Dawn is my favorite game of all time.
Right. I think it's an interesting thing. Oh, and also side note, I find it interesting that you brought up Predator, because aren't we getting a new Predator movie this year?
Yeah, with Olivia Munn and Jacob Tremblay and
Anyway, that's why I just thought it was interesting you brought up Predator. So here's where I am at with this, because I think it's interesting, and I don't know why it is Far Cry 5 that has really I don't want to like blossom this conversation so much, and maybe it's just because it's hitting a nerve with people. I don't know, but I feel like pretty historically, like when we talk about games, we compare them to other games, or we talk about like, oh, it would be really nice if it did this, or it would be really cool if it did this, or it'd be really awesome if this had happened. Like I feel like we've done that, and we've always done that when we're talking about games and we're talking about the things that they like or things we like or don't like. And maybe it's because for Far Cry 5, from a story perspective, we don't have another game to point that we would say, oh, if it had been more like that game, then people would take that criticism better, maybe. And I'm not saying it's okay to downgrade a game because you had some preconceived notion of what the narrative is going to be. I think the game so far for me has been a Far Cry game where it has this really compelling opening, and then it just gets dumb. That's what Far Cry is, Yeah. And I think maybe people were hoping it'd be more than that, and that's fine if you did and it didn't work out. But I've never really played Far Cry because the stories were good. Right.
Well, do you think like, so imagine we're in a world where Far Cry 5 did pan out to be the political assassin game, like that everyone thought it was going to be.
Yeah,
do you think people would really have wanted that?
I don't know, because I don't know if it would have been a Far Cry game then.
I don't think it would have been.
And that's where I just find it interesting more than anything, because I feel like we do compare games against each other, and we do compare games against expectation. How often, like how much, when I was talking about Ni no Kuni too the other week, was that, and I was like, hey man, I really wish I would have appreciated this game more had they had more cutscenes and voice acting.
Yeah,
that's not what they wanted to do, or like that's not the product they delivered. So is it okay for me then to project my idea of what it should have been and critique the game based off that? Because to me, that's not really any different, right? Right,
but that's your expectation off of a game in a series, right? So like your expectation is from experience. So I think that's different than comparing like Breath of the Wild to everything. Because you're taking a game, it would be like going like, I really wish in Uncharted he had chain blades like Kratos. Like,
that would be crazy.
Wouldn't it? It would be nuts. Yeah. But like that, people like, that's my favorite mechanic. Or like, I really wish like this game included more button pressing sequences like God of War. Mm-hmm. Like sometimes we have the amount of games that are available, we have enough sequels to satiate that need to play the same game over and over again.
Right.
And I know people like we were just talking about on Discord. Nathan hates the old game is old conversation like topic, but like people are paying $60 for Bayonetta right now because they really like the way that game is, and I don't get it, but that's my problem. I'm not going to tell other people to not go buy that game.
That's right, because Bayonetta is great and everyone should buy it and play it.
Right, but I can play Devil May Cry on Game Pass, and it's the same game.
Don't even tell me that is the same game.
I'm mostly kidding. I'm mostly kidding, but I know.
And we have Bayonetta anyway, so it's fine.
And you could compare those together. Like you could compare Bayonetta and Devil May Cry.
Mm-hmm. But is it okay? Would it be okay
to take the review score down? I don't know.
Or to critique it and say, well, this other game in this style or this genre does this better than this, so I don't know why you'd play this game. You know what I'm saying? Like, is that okay to do?
Right. I mean, it's so tricky, but I don't think I think it's okay to say that you wish it did things differently.
Mm-hmm.
But I think as a reviewer, you should be reviewing the content as it's presented, and you have your own opinion. I don't know.
But then how do you give any game a score other than a 10?
It's so murky. You're right.
Right.
In my head, I'm like, well, then you obviously score this way. But no, it's not so obvious. I think it's so one of my first reviews for BSVG was for a game called Castles on Xbox. And it was a puzzly platformer game.
Mm-hmm.
I still rated it high, even though I despise games that are like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I based it on the content of the game and how it looked and how it controlled, even though I hate that type of game. Now, did I do that wrong because I scored it high based off of my experience with the game and what I know the game is going for? Mm-hmm. Should I have scored it lower because I hate that type of game? Because that's just a bias as a reviewer going into the game. Like I did Ginger in the last Crystal or whatever, and I don't like platformer games like that. So should that affect my score? If I'm a reviewer, I'm not just getting to review game styles I like.
Mm-hmm.
So then we come into that whole conversation of before, I think it is okay to, have complaints and criticisms and compare to other games. But if I'm playing a game in a style that I hate, is it now fair for me to give it a 4 instead of a 7? Because I hate that type of game.
Right. Because then the argument is, well, should you have ever been the person to review that game if you don't like that genre? And then you get into that rabbit hole of, is your view. Because the person, because theoretically, if somebody's reading that review, it's because they're probably somewhat interested in that game or that genre. Yeah. So is it fair to be represented by someone who thinks that genre is crap?
Right.
I'm probably not the guy to write racing game reviews.
Right.
I get annoyed in Far Cry 5 when I have to drive around in first person. I don't know if you can switch it, but if you can, somebody tell me how.
I haven't been able to figure it out. I just get in helicopter, and then
I know that's
actually
what I do all the time now too. I take a helicopter everywhere.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think it's a tricky thing, and I think with board games too, right? Because when you look at deck building games, it's like, well, there's so many deck building games and they're all so similar. Like, yes, some add things or take things in a different way. But are you always, when we're reviewing it, are you thinking about, okay, this game, we always say you can't rate a game in a vacuum, you know? So it's how, and no matter how much we try not to, do you compare it to well, does this stack up against, Legendary or Dominion or whatever your favorite deck building is, Ascension, whatever it might be, do you use that as benchmarks in your mind, even if you're not trying to be wow, this game seems like it would be, yeah. That's why I'm kind of glad I don't do reviews very often anymore. I just talk about games because I think it's easier to say here's what I like, here's what I didn't like. But that's the thing that still gets me is that, and especially with this Far Cry stuff, is if somebody had just said the story I didn't find very engaging or gripping and didn't say, I wish they had done these other things, but gave it the same score, would people have any issues with it?
Right. I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know either. And I don't necessarily know if that's right or wrong. If the story didn't get grip you, the story didn't grip you.
Yeah, I think with the Far Cry 5 thing, I think it's just the reason why it's getting so much of a buzz right now is just because of the political landscape right now, and people on both sides of whatever we want to call it are looking for excuses to come out and cause more controversy.
Oh, sure.
So I think we just have more people talking about it, which makes more people aware of it. And then you just have like that awful picture, that clickbaity picture with like Far Cry 5 makes it okay for you to play as a coward or something like that. Like what a terrible thing to be bringing into games. We need to distance ourselves from all this hate that's been out there. This is a release. This is your time off from the real world.
Yeah, but I mean, there are still people who make games that say something, so
right.
It doesn't have to be that. I mean,
right.
it can be game. You can still have games that say something and that do something. I think there is a stronger push towards games that say something more or mean something more than just playing the game. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Like, that's why we're so excited, so good that there is so many games, because there's something for everyone. But yeah, I mean, to make it easier, like if somebody was like, oh yeah, the story Horizon sucks, so the game gets a 7. Okay, I guess. Like, what do you say to that then?
Right. I mean, if you don't like the story, then that's then you don't like the story.
Like, and like you said, I mean, I don't think a lot of people think pieces would be coming out about like, well, spoilers for Horizon here coming up. We really need to think about how we're moving towards the future. Otherwise, we're going to create our own downfall. So, and Horizon predicted the downfall of people in the wrong way. Right. So the story sucks. Like, I don't know. Like, So yeah, and I agree with you. I do think that there is a trend, or it is in vogue, probably, to write, think pieces, if you would, about what Far Cry 5 could have been. Right. And I guess that's fine. Like, people could do that thing, I think. But I think also that like there's some projection there about like what Far Cry games are. Yeah. They're dumb fun, as this game very much has shown. It's just dumb fun.
Absolutely.
So, but yeah. And I think the other problem is Wild Wild Country came out on Netflix.
Oh yeah.
Have you watched that at all? Have you heard about this at all?
I want to watch it. I keep seeing it on my recommended list.
Yeah, I'm on episode 5 now. So you put that with, and then you start this Far Cry game, and you're like, oh my gosh, like this is going to so be a thing. So I can see it. Like, I can get it. There's a lot of that stuff going on right now, of specifically cult things,
right.
Other stuff. So, anything else you want to say about this, Josh? Do we have a definitive answer on this? Should you pull in outside stuff, or should you only go off of what you got? How does this all work, man?
So, while you were talking about it, I was just thinking, so I'm looking at this, the Winter Tales game, right, that I have. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about, it's probably a little easier in board games because I can play this game, right? And it might not be for me, but I can still fairly review it and review components and review quality and pieces and other people's experiences. And it can be a little bit more of an open review for people to kind of get a better picture of it. With a video game, it's a very personal experience, I think, for the most part. So everything comes down to how you played it. You don't have rules necessarily telling you what to do and when to do it. So it's, even whether it's a linear or open world game, the game experience is much more open, and then a board game is much more linear of an experience. So I would think it would be a little bit easier to review a board game unbiased, or be able to give it a review and include your own personal thoughts on it without necessarily affecting the scores of the game too much.
How much do you think time plays a role in that? The amount of time it takes for you to play a board game versus the amount of time it would take you to play many video games.
Yeah. I mean, it's huge because like you can't finish a lot of games, or 20 to 60 hour games, depending on the content. I mean, there are still some short ones out there, but you could probably play a game to death in 20 hours for a board game, depending on the game. Yeah. So you're also getting different experiences with board games, though. If you're not playing solo, I feel like even if the game is the same, your experience will be different every time. Based off who you're playing with, and how many times you have to reread the rules, or if they taught you something new or whatever. So I think it's a little different.
I just wonder if there's ever, and I guess I've thought about this too, is like if you're playing a game and it's a 20-hour game and there's one thing you really don't like about it, every 10 minutes you're like, man, I wish this game did this.
Yeah.
Man, I wish this game did this.
Yeah.
Man, I wish you know what I'm saying? So by the end, it's just this huge thing, which for most people might not be a big thing, but you're dealing with this thing you hated for 20 hours. I don't know.
Yeah, we have people like that who fight for house rule changes, and I'm like, I'm not changing the rules to this game unless they posted it in errata online somewhere. But so I get that too. Some people just don't like particular parts of a game,
right?
Which should affect the score, I think.
Right. So if they don't like the story, I'm just kidding.
No, I think you're right. I think you're right. Like, obviously, if you're buying a game thematically and the story's not good, you're not going to want to revisit it.
Yeah. So, hey, that was a fun discussion. And we kind of agreed, but kind of disagreed about some things. So that's good. So that was fun.
Can't always agree on everything.
No, I know. It probably wouldn't make the most exciting show if we did, but hey.
Why? I don't know if we've ever been claimed to be exciting.
I'm excited to be here. Actually, one really cool thing, I know we're running a little long, but there's this cool thing I want to mention very briefly. So the college that I worked at, we have added this fall, we are doing esports as a collegiate athletic sport.
Nice.
And they actually just did the branding, like they're turning a room in our student union into our esports arena.
Wow.
And it's like branded on the outside of it now. And like we're getting custom computers that have like our logo on them. And they're going all out. I'm pretty impressed. I might try to wiggle my way into an assistant coaching position for the Overwatch team. So we'll see what happens.
Then you gotta sneak into the computer room when everything's set up and just download all of our episodes onto the computer.
I know, right? Well, it's interesting because actually when I started at this place, I'm actually I was the first person to bring this proposal forward when I worked in admissions there. But then I left for a different position and I was like, well, in my new position, I can't pursue this anymore. Yeah. But somebody a couple of years later took my original proposal, dusted it off, added some new spit, polish, and shine to it and brought it back up again and started doing it. So I still feel a little bit of ownership for it. Yeah. But yeah, it's definitely not, I am not the owner of it anymore, but I might see if I can still get involved with it a little bit because I think it might be fun.
Oh, that's really cool.
But hey, what do you say we wrap this show up?
Let's do it. Is that me?
That's you.
Oh, jeez. Oh boy. Okay. So, well, you guys should be used to this by now. Thanks for joining us. Guys and gals. Hopefully there's some gals out there listening. Remember, as always, find us on social media at BoardWithVG. Hashtag BoardWithVG as well. We still got some awesome people using the hashtag BoardWithVG, so we appreciate it, and we're glad you guys are doing it. It's always fun to see what you're playing and read what your thoughts are. And yes, I want to say, I don't remember who it was. It might have been Splig. There was a game, like a board game / VR game that came out on Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Capital Crimes or something like that. I did see it. It has since ended. But I wasn't super into the VR aspect of it, but we can talk about that at another time. We're still on Facebook, facebook.com/boardwithvg. No fan fiction, please, at boardwithvg@gmail.com. And I'll just plug my gaming stuff. So Why So Serious, SIRRIUS, on both PlayStation and Xbox. And I have a random Switch code. You can try to guess. Maybe you'll find me.
Oh man, that'd be impressive if they did.
Kyle, where can people find you?
So I'm on all the social medias and on PlayStation Network, Xbox Live, Board Game Geek, all at Psychocross, CYCOCROSS. As always, if you have any suggestions for future topics, reach out to us on social media. Let us know what you want us to talk about. After listening to our conversation, today, did you agree with us? Are we full of poop? Let us know what your thoughts are. We want to know and engage in a thoughtful, respectful conversation with all of you all. Because that's why we do this, and it's a ton of fun, and we enjoy when you interact with us. So that's it for us on this wonderful episode number 26. We are back on the rails, Kevin, so you can't be too upset. And as always, everyone, whether it be board games or video games, never stop gaming.
has been a production of the Play Some Video Games Podcast Network. Find more great content at playsomevideogames.com.